Dangerous winter weather is approaching the Triad this afternoon. A live look over Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, and Burlington shows no precipitation yet, but the clouds have certainly moved in, and our weather team is tracking how soon things could get going. Thank you for joining us on WFMY Plus. I'm Chad Silber. A live look at the radar this afternoon shows the system as it pushes our way. You can see all of that white there is snow across the area, but apparently it's just too dry on the surface for that snow to actually hit the ground at this point. Tim says we should start to expect to see the snow shortly, and then it turns to sleet, eventually turning over to freezing rain tomorrow morning. Right now, utility trucks from 27 states and Canada are staging at the Four Seasons Town Center in Greensboro. We shot this drone video last night as they formed lines as they waited for the system to arrive. Duke Energy told us its response will be nearly as large as it was for Hurricane Helene. We have continuing coverage all night long and through the entirety of this storm. Nixon Norman is live at the Duke staging area, but we want to start with Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley, who has an update on the timeline.
Yeah, that's right, Chad. You know, about here from outside, I can tell you just how cold it is. We have some bitter cold air as expected. Remember, yesterday we were about 50 degrees. The day before we were close to 60. Right now, it's in the low 20s. And it's very dry, too. So that is part of the reason we're not seeing any of that snow yet. And we might not still for several hours. Wanted to start out just by showing you the size of this storm system. Here we are in the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina. Everybody coated with some type of winter weather alert. Ice storm warnings, winter storm warnings. So we're all expecting pretty nasty winter weather. It just hasn't gotten going yet. And I will tell you, there's still a couple of hours yet to go. So you have a little bit of last minute prep time really to kind of get yourself situated and cozy. We've kind of been saying be ready by 6 p.m. as we've gone throughout the week. On the wider view, I find this just fascinating. You look all the way up from New England, across Ohio, all the way back to Texas. That is an enormous part of the country under winter storm warnings right now. It's just stunning to see. And they've been dealing with winter weather in Texas, Oklahoma, and now it's been moving closer to us. I know we're still in the waiting game phase, and sometimes that waiting is really uneasy, right? That's kind of where we are currently. But take a look. In Tennessee, they've gotten a better thumping of snow than they were expecting. This is Nashville right about here. And what we'll be watching later on this evening, are we able to get a little period of snow showers, or does it start right away as sleet? I tend to think we will hopefully have a couple hours of snowflakes before going to that purple shade. That's when that warm air comes above our heads and starts to turn the snow into the sleety mess. I think that's already started to happen in Nashville. They were looking at some really nice snowflakes earlier. That's a live camera on Broadway at the moment. Now you don't really see the flakes any longer, so that would indicate to me it's more or less sleet coming down over them, and probably pretty heavy as well. Our radar, as we showed you a second ago, it looks like things are getting going, but here's the deal. When you bring a snowflake down from the sky, if the air is super, super dry, evaporation happens and it just gets pulverized. And so we've kind of got to wait a little while before that can saturate up and we're able to start to see that happening. Our forecast model, that looped pretty quickly there, but between now, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and midnight, that's when we start to see things really getting going. And that purple shade, that's the sleet that we've been talking about. And so for this evening, keep an eye to the sky. Between now and about 8 o'clock is probably your window of opportunity to find any snowflakes. I do not think you're going to get several inches of snow. That's just not really in the cards. But could you go outside and, enjoy watching it? Yeah, you probably could. After 10, we're too warm upstairs, and that's going to mean sleet taking over. The main concern tonight into tomorrow morning, it's not power outages. Nothing like that is going to happen, but we will see road conditions deteriorate and go downhill a little bit because of that sleet. Tomorrow morning, this is around 4 a.m. You see how we have two different shades of pink? That's the sleet, those ice balls. That's the freezing rain. This is the part that could coat any trees, power lines, and add weight to things. That's our power concern, and it doesn't happen right away. But throughout the day on Sunday, I'm still very interested to know what time that changeover happens. When we go from the sleet to the freezing rain, it's going to stay that way the rest of the storm. And so that's the key. If it waits until lunchtime, we might be good to avoid power outages. If it happens right away early in the morning, we could be in trouble. So let's keep that in mind. You also might notice how it looks like it's getting a little lighter midday tomorrow. You think that's a pretty good thing. The weird thing about freezing rain, though, is when it's drizzly, it actually accumulates more efficiently than when it's coming down hard. I know that's crazy to think about, but when it comes down hard, it really runs off the tree, runs off the power line. So lightness might not be in our favor for tomorrow. This will all be ending by about 9 p.m. on Sunday, and after that, we're dry. But the storm's not really over. We'll have winds on Monday and then cold on Tuesday. Yes, you could get accumulating sleet, less than an inch south of Asheboro, 1 to 2 inches in the Triad, 2 to 3 farther off to the north. It's not a huge concern normally, but when we think about how those roads are going to be iced up for several days, that is a concern because it makes it harder for us to get around. We have made some subtle adjustments to our freezing rain map. I've lowered totals ever so slightly around the Triad area, about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch, and boy, is that going to make a difference. 1/4 inch, still pretty bad. You tend to have power outages and tree problems. 1/2 an inch, that is severe, and that is still possible from Raleigh to Asheboro to Charlotte. We're going to be watching that very carefully. Hopefully, we don't get that bad, but hope is not a way to prepare. We've got to get prepared one way or another. So to sum it all up for you, be prepared to be stuck for a couple of days. We are expecting power outages, just don't know how many. That's going to depend on how heavy that ice is and how much it's weighing everything down. The impacts from the sleet, they're there, but they're not as severe as ice travel and power outages. Those are the impacts that I think are going to make or break this storm for us. So it's a long storm. We're just at the beginning stages here. It hasn't even started yet, but it is going to continue. You see the hour by hour for tomorrow. Sleet or freezing rain pretty much the whole day long. It is a stay at home kind of a day. It's not only the icy roads that are dangerous, but falling trees or power lines. That could be an issue tomorrow evening. I did mention the threat of wind. On Monday, gusty winds, 20 to 30 miles per hour. That could be an issue. That could bring down some trees or power lines, and that's something I want you to be alert for. Now, on Tuesday morning, some very cold air will be invading our area. In fact, it could even be in the single digits at times as we work our way into early Tuesday. So that'll be another concern, especially for anybody who doesn't have any power. So we've got to think about keeping ourselves warm in creative ways if you're not ready to do so. We already showed you the Futurecast, but just to reiterate, this evening we'll be watching between now and about 6 to 8 p.m. for things to get going. And then looking beyond that, we head in toward Monday. That's when things are dry. Temperatures will be cold, 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 basically right around 30 during the daytime, but we do have sunshine. We're forecasting 7 degrees for Tuesday morning, and that bitter cold is going to have an impact. Notice we're stuck in the teens every morning the rest of the week with daytime highs only in the 30s, which means roads could stay affected all throughout the week.
Tim, thank you. The power is going to be an issue down the road, and that's why hundreds of utility workers are ready to go. WFMY News 2's Nixon Norman is live at the staging area this afternoon. Nixon, sounds like it's just a waiting game at this point.
Oh, and so it begins, Chad. The start of this winter storm, we are just hours away. It's safe to say it could be hours until we see that first bit of snow or ice or a mixture of both making their way to the Triad. Now, when it comes to the utility trucks behind me, hundreds of them, there are some from Indiana and Michigan, the more northern part of the country, and then some from Florida or Tennessee, even some as far from Canada. Now, I want to give you a bird's eye view of these just rows and again rows of utility trucks here at the Four Seasons Mall. They are set to be staffed by thousands of workers. They're all coming out of state, like I had said, on behalf of Duke Energy. I was told in the last hour by Duke Energy rep that they too are in a holding pattern just like us. We're just waiting for things to roll through, but they aren't the only ones. We also stopped by a nearby Ace Hardware, which was completely wiped out of all of the things people were looking for. They're out of things like sleds, propane, ice melt, kerosene, gas cans, and lantern oil. Aisles were empty and many left empty-handed. Matthew Newton, who is an assistant manager there, says he hasn't seen anything like this in years.
I think it's because a week before we got that unsure forecast for anywhere from 9 to 18 inches of snow, and it's just stayed fluctuating the whole time.
Now, you might have seen outside of Ace Hardware, there was a sign up saying that they will be preemptively closed tomorrow, of course, due to inclement weather. And I was asking one of the managers there, I was like, well, what time are you guys going to close today? He said as soon as he sees that first snowflake drop, they are going home. We're here now in Guilford County, and we will continue to be throughout the night, giving you the latest from what's going to happen with this winter storm.
Nixon, thank you. I'm curious what the mood, the atmosphere is like there, because, you know, just looking behind you, there's not a soul in sight. It's really just all these trucks staging in that area. Have you seen any of the utility workers? What is the mood in that area like right now?
Honestly, right now, I think it's just there's a vibe of patience right now. We've seen a few here and there kind of just walking around with their yellow vests on. There's not any kind of franticness or like anxiety going on around here, and it's not really excitement either. It's, again, just that holding pattern that we find ourselves in here at the news, and then of course the utility workers that will be out there helping those down power lines and fixing all the things that really need fixing when that ice is set to come through.
And Nixon, you had said that you were at the store earlier today, and I went last night on my dinner break, and I was kind of trying to figure out how people seemed to be feeling. And I don't know about you, but when I was just kind of observing other people out at the store, they weren't panicked, they weren't panic buying. It seemed as though everybody had a mission, they were focused on it, and they just wanted to get what they needed and get home. Is that kind of what you experienced?
Yeah, because there was some joking at the Ace Hardware that we were at, like on the sign there was all outside of the store, there was all that no sleds, no propane. So people would go in and they'd kind of be politely turned away because there wasn't the things that they needed there. But again, it was kind of like, it was joking. There was a happiness to it all because people are excited for the winter weather to come through, but I think they also realize just how serious it is, especially when they go into Ace Hardware and they realize just how wiped out they are. They're like, oh wow, like people are really preparing. Like this goes beyond milk and bread. People are getting propane tanks and they're really suiting up to be stuck home or without power for the next few days, like Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley has been telling us all this time.
And something that we will continue to do over the coming days. Nixon, thanks so much, and we will check in with you a little bit later.
Stu wants to know, has your last-minute storm checklist. This is before the storm hits. You're going to want to do the laundry, wash the dishes, take out the trash, make sure everyone has a shower or a bath. You don't want to tax the grid with all this stuff during the storm, and you certainly don't want to miss out on getting these things done while you still have power. Now, let me add something else to the list right there. Cover the outside spigot, and you don't even have to run to the store for this. Here's a DIY. In this YouTube video, he's using old rags around the spigot, but you can use pieces of a towel, a couple of old socks. Then you wrap a plastic grocery bag or even a Ziploc bag around it. Secure it with duct tape, even a rubber band will do. Now, you can't control the storm, but you can take charge of how you prepare for it. During the storm, there's another checklist to keep in mind. So you're going to want to have your dripping faucets. This is best for those on city water services. You want to drip hot and cold water, especially for faucets on those exterior walls. Next, if you have power, make sure you're opening all the vents and the doors in your house. Closing them just makes the system work harder.
And if we have doors shut and vents turned off, we're actually causing more harm to the system than we are actually, anything else. You're not being any more comfortable by closing vents off or shutting doors. Let it breathe, let the returns pool and circulate the air as it should be. It's designed to do that for the home.
And last but not least, cover those drafty door jambs. Roll up a towel, put it in the door jamb so that the warm air can't sneak out. The governor described this storm as causing major disruptions to daily life for days.
And when we talk about ice storms, even a small amount can have big consequences. Meteorologist Becca Birdsall breaks down why ice is one of the most dangerous types of winter weather.
When we talk about ice storms, the amounts often sound small. 1/10 of an inch, 1/4 inch, maybe even 1/2 an inch. But ice is one of the most damaging winter hazards we face.
Unlike snow, ice coats surfaces like clear cement, and as that coating thickens, the impacts increase quickly.
Ice storms form during a specific atmospheric setup. Cold air is trapped near the ground while a layer of warmer air sits overhead. Snow melts into rain as it falls through the warm layer that becomes super cooled in the shallow cold air near the surface. Now, when those drops hit trees, power lines, roads, or sidewalks, they freeze on contact, creating ice.
A tenth of an inch of ice, often called a glaze, can still be dangerous. Roads, bridges, and sidewalks become slick and hard to see. Damage is usually limited at this level, but travel quickly becomes hazardous. At a quarter inch of ice, impacts escalate, and this is an important threshold because an ice storm warning criteria is met at 1/4 inch or greater, causing tree limbs to snap, roads to become blocked, and scattered power outages. A ½ inch of ice represents a major and often destructive ice storm. Ice at this level can add up to 500 pounds of extra weight to a single power line span. Power lines and poles can fail, leading to widespread outages and long recovery times. With ice storms, preparation is key. Charge phones and backup batteries ahead of time and have flashlights, extra blankets, and enough food and water to last at least a couple of days in case of power outages. I'm meteorologist Becca Birdsall.
And you can text your questions if you have any. I'm sure you do. You can text them to 336-379-5775. Big or small, we may feature it right here on the newscast. You can boost your weather IQ and ask away. All right, let's get to Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley, who has an update on the forecast.
You got to chat him every minute. We are learning a little bit more. You know, we've been talking about this system since Monday, haven't we? And now is truly about the first hour of it. When we show you this radar picture, it's always a little confusing, and especially with winter storms. There's a lot of different types of precipitation that you might be able to see. So I'm going to pause it really quickly. I know it looks like it's snowing in Winston-Salem, Asheboro, all these other places. That's not happening. We can't really confirm that right now, mostly because our air is too dry. Although I have started to get our first couple of reports from you, viewers, letting me know what's going on. And currently in Asheboro and in Randleman, unfortunately, our radar is coloring this as snow. It's already coming down as sleet. And that tends to mean that we do have warm air already above our heads. So the coloration on the radar, not always correct. We're also getting a couple of reports coming in of some snowflakes in Stokes County and Forsyth and in Yadkin County. So we'll be continuing to kind of keep our eyes peeled, and you should too. Like I said, this is a miserable storm overall, but if you're going to have a fun part, it would be the beginning part, because that's when you might be able to sneak out with a couple of snowflakes. So right now it's 22 degrees in Winston-Salem. The dew point, though, is 0. That's why there's such a lag in what's falling from the sky and what's hitting the ground. If we roll back our futurecast, here we go. Between now and 7 to 8 o'clock, that's your opportunity to mostly get a little snowflake here or there, mainly above north of I-40. If you live south of I-40, you're probably not getting any snow whatsoever with this system. I will say, when things start to come down, it's going to stick. Doesn't care about that brine whatsoever. That makes about no difference when it's 20 degrees outside. So things will get slick. And I would use 6 p.m. as a guide of when you want to be off the roads. Don't be going out to dinner at 7, 8 o'clock tonight. That wouldn't be what I would do if I were you. Just letting you know. Sunday, that pinkish shade mostly is freezing rain, and that's where we get into some trouble. I do think that we have still a big risk of some icing around the region. And, you know, when we talk about ice concerns, it never sounds like a lot, but 1/4 inch, I mean, really, it's nothing. What's 1/4 inch going to do? Well, it does do a lot. 1/4 inch can bring down trees. It can bring down power lines. Almost all of us watching this report have a risk of 1/4 inch or more. That risk of 1/2 inch or more, it's not a guarantee, but there is that possibility, especially areas south, east of Greensboro, southwest of Greensboro, Charlotte area. They have a bigger risk than we do, but I have lowered it a little bit compared to yesterday, and we'll talk more about that. As far as the impacts go, the main impacts are unchanged. We have road conditions that'll be going downhill tonight, and then tomorrow we have to watch the weight of the ice on the trees. How do those trees get weighed down? How do the power lines get weighed down? And how many power problems do we see? It's not a question of how many power, are we going to have power problems? There will be. It's just a question of how widespread. So we do expect this to be a big, impactful storm, and we would really like to keep the lights on in your area, because once we do, or if we lose them, not only could a big portion of the state be without power, and it could take a long time to fix it, but those temperatures, they're pretty unforgiving. I'm going to show you now the 7-day forecast, and what I want you to do, instead of looking at that big number, look at those small numbers. So that's what you're battling if you're trying to kind of keep your house warm all throughout the week without some power. So the better you can do to kind of keep that house preheated, so to speak, this weekend. I'm not going to tell you to flood the grid here, but you certainly want to make sure you're comfortable right now. Keep that heat inside your home as best you can, because that's going to serve you well if it goes out. 7 degrees Tuesday morning should be the worst that we get out of this thing. Now, currently, I don't see any other winter threats on our map. We would talk about that if that came up later. But right now, Chad, I've got it mostly as a dry, cold, sunny week of weather. Really cold stuff. I mean, that's the coldest 7-day that I can remember for us in a long time, which is why if you think about, well, what's an inch of sleet going to do? Well, it's hard to melt that stuff. And if you're only getting up to 35 degrees at the warmest point throughout the middle of the week, it's not going to help that much. And sleet, they're those solid ice balls. It's not snowflakes. And so they really need a lot of help and a lot of heat to kind of get rid of them, which is why I'd also recommend you at home, once we get into tomorrow, certainly, it's not going to be fun. You probably want to clear your driveway as best you can. I know it really will be a challenge. So if you have any physical problems, don't do it. But it's heavy stuff. Try and get it out of the way, because it'll only get harder as it melts and refreezes throughout the week.
I'm glad that that we'll at least see sun next week. Tanya had been talking this week that
yes,
if the power goes out and you don't have power at home, but you are forced to stay at home, just open up the blinds and let that sun warm up the inside as much as it can.
And this time of year, just from where is the sun standpoint, you probably know which sides of your house get the sun and which don't. But the sun this time of year is mostly in the southern facing side of your house. And so with the blinds, you'd really want to have them open where that sun is shining in, the south facing side right now. Keep the ones on the north facing side shut, because that's going to keep some of the heat in your home. If you have blinds, draw them. But like Chad was saying, during the heating of the day, especially midday, afternoon, let that sunshine come right in. If you have pets, they know this. They do this every day. They find that sun coming in and they sit right there, and then they kind of move along with it. Use that heat to your advantage. And then once the sun goes down, shut those blinds, because then you're going to trap that heat a little better, marginally better inside your house.
One of the, I guess, the discouraging thing that I've seen on social media, even just within my own friend circle over the past couple of days, is people aren't convinced this is happening.
Sure.
Because we dodged the bullet so many times. We are always, it seems to be, over the last couple of years, dodging the big one bullet. And it seems as though it's going to hit us in the chest this time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And I think that's part of the reason, we saw this with, this is not a good comparison, but we did see this with Hurricane Helene a little bit. Getting people ready for that kind of a storm was difficult because they hadn't seen or they hadn't experienced that kind of a storm before. It was a unique situation, a terrible one, but a unique situation. So if I'm trying to prepare you for a weather event and I say, well, you remember that one? Well, it's going to be like that. For a lot of folks, especially in our area, if you're new, you might not remember a bad winter storm before, because we haven't had very many. You and I have worked them here, but it has been a while. And so I do think the impacts with this, they're always unique. Every storm is a little bit different, but the impacts here are going to be, you get a slushy mess on the ground, it freezes, you get ice on the trees, some of them come down, some of you don't have power. And the problem that I really hate is that we just aren't going to be able to fix it. There's only so much we're going to be able to do over this next week of our lives. So encouraged to see all the help that's come. We have the cavalry, it looks like, has been assembled from Raleigh to Greensboro to Charlotte with all the power crews, and we'd love to have them. And they might be busy. We hope they're not, but they might be busy.
I was both surprised and encouraged that Duke Energy is saying that this response already is almost similar to Hurricane Helene response. I mean, that I think speaks volumes of what they're anticipating could happen here.
Yeah, and we don't want to scare you or anything like that. With that comparison, I think probably what they're preparing for, our landscape is not going to be forever altered the way that Western North Carolina was. This is an ice storm. What it does do, though, is it brings down a lot of trees and power lines, which is bad. But think about the parts of the state that we're forecasting right now. Raleigh, big impacts. Charlotte, big impacts. Triad, big impacts. These are the population centers.
Right.
And it's not to say that anyone is valued over the others, but if you're trying to fix a power grid, you got to fix the power lines where the power lines are, and you got to fix those things where the people are. And the big core of our population in the state are all under threat here. And in Western North Carolina, it was also a sizable chunk, but not as many people, not as big of a chunk of the state. So our impacts will not be as severe as Helene's impacts were, but still a big impact over a big footprint of the state and a big challenge to, fix all that and put it all back together. I think they understand that. They know where their customers are.
I always listen to you very closely when you talk on the news, and I always can find a small difference in something that you're saying. And I noticed at the beginning of your forecast on the Plus, you had lowered or at least changed the total for the Greensboro area. Why is that?
Yeah, so we're always looking at little adjustments, and yesterday we kind of had that half-inch line over most of Guilford County. I have lowered it a little bit south, and if you guys pop up my weather graphics, I can pull up that map one more time and we can show it for you. But basically what Chad is referencing here is our ice forecast map, where we have it right now versus where we had it yesterday. Subtle changes, small differences, but if you do live in Guilford County, I do have us mostly in that quarter-inch category to half-inch category right now. A couple reasons for that. I think that overall, we're still going to get a ton of moisture with this system, but the overall amount of moisture to play with could be a little lower than initially thought. Also, I tend to see that in the models right now, I think they're running a little bit too warm. And what that tells me is that the fact that we're a little colder going on right now is that we might be able to stay sleet a few more hours than they're thinking. So that's just my opinion as a meteorologist. I'll be honest with you, I can show you a computer model right now that has us getting like an inch of ice. I don't believe it. That's part of the forecasting process is, deciding what to believe and what not to believe. I do think that we're, of course, at a big risk of having big and bad ice. But if anything, we're hoping it to be regular bad and not insanely bad. So those are kind of the levels that we're talking about. We've lived through ice storms even like the last 2-3 years where parts of our area have gotten 1/4 of an inch of ice. And that's no fun. And you have power outages and you have down trees, but you're overall not crippled by it. That half-inch type of stuff, you're still, chainsawing things a month later. And that's really what we have the risk of and we want to avoid. But if anything, I do think that risk for viewers watching Randolph County concerns me, Davidson County. I'm concerned about everybody, but those southern counties are a little bit more concerning to me than our northern ones.
One of our reporters, Amber Lake, just sent in a video a few minutes ago of what appears to be flurries, very light flurries in the Archdale area. Is this right on track with what you were anticipating, or is this sooner?
So throughout the week, at least the last couple of days, we've been kind of saying about 3 to 6 o'clock. So between 3 and 6 o'clock is when you could start to see stuff coming down. And what's it right now? It's 3:28. I'm doing okay so far.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. And so what you want to see probably is, as far as timeline goes, probably the longer the snow stays, the better?
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's not really a world that I can see that we see a lot of snowfall. It's probably going to change to sleet pretty quickly today. What I'm really nervous about tomorrow, and we'll hope it goes in our favor, I want to keep that change over to freezing rain as late as possible. If it holds off till lunchtime, you're probably keeping the lights on. If it changes over to freezing rain by 7 a.m., we could be in trouble.
Okay, Tim, we're going to be here for the long haul. Well, you are really going to be here for the long haul over the next few hours, next couple of days even.
They're not going to let me leave.
No, and we're going to continue to do these hourly updates here on WFMY Plus. So get cozy, warm up. Here are the sky cams, and we will have more coming up at the top of the hour.
I'm looking for those flurries.
A major storm is closing in. Be ready. WFMY News 2 will be with you through it all. From snow to sleet to freezing rain, we have got your back. We'll keep you informed on every platform, on TV, streaming on WFMY Plus, and anytime on WFMYnews2.com. This is your trusted team, your most accurate weather team, 11 years in a row. Stay with us. We'll weather the storm together and be there through the aftermath of Mother Nature's mess. WFMY News 2, your source ahead of, during, and after the storm.